Mr. Chair, I move that we exit executive session.
A motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
A motion on the,
Mr. Chair, I would move that on, let's see, I can hand it over to the first cases.
first one.
There you go. On case 202-0061 and 202-00109, I would move that we approve the settlement offer as discussed. And on case 2017-0178 and 2017-0193, I would move that we accept the terms and conditions of the partial release and lien agreement as presented.
Have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sign that one. That one. All right, Rick.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Rick Phillips. I work for the J.R. Simplot Company. Our address is 1150 West Highway 30 here in Pocatello. I have with me our plant manager, Trish Arvey, which we're right in the middle of an unusual fall turnaround maintenance thing, and people across the street from me are usually in a pretty bad mood when they go through turnaround. But Trish was able to walk away from turnaround this morning and join me. She wanted to meet with you guys. I appreciate it. I also want to compliment the color of your photos on the wall. Looks like the first commissioners we've had in color. That's good to see.
Actually, the sitting commissioners are in color, and as soon as they go off,
is
they
that
go back to black and
You
white.
turn them into black and white.
Yeah, you're obsolete.
In July of this year, the J.R. Simplot Company and the U.S. government came to an agreement through a consent decree on how Simplot is to manage a big part of our operation. We refer to as the gyp stack or the gypsum stack, which is that big gray mountain behind us. Very important part of our operation, and our purpose here today is to see, just to ask you to support that agreement that's out there. It's going through a comment period from now until next Monday, so people are invited to submit their comments. It's a 400-page agreement. I've tried to read it and I fell asleep about page 3, but it's an important one for our operation. It's taken us about 19 years to get to that agreement, and I'll give you a little bit of the backstory on that, and then we'll stand for any kind of questions you have. But as you know, we take raw phosphate ore from our Smoky Canyon mine, and if I were to hold a rock of phosphate here, most of us can't tell the difference between that rock and any other rock, except it's a big black rock. And we grind that up into a fine powder, ship it through our pipeline to Pocatello, and then the phosphate that's in that rock is bound up there. It can't be released until we react it with sulfuric acid. But any phosphate rock really around the world only contains a certain percentage of that magic ingredient for phosphorus, P2O5, usually about 30 to 40%, somewhere in there on average. So everything else we can't use. And so that's what that big gray mountain there is behind us, is that the remainder of that phosphate rock that's been reacted with sulfur, and it becomes technically, in EPA's eyes, phosphogypsum. And anywhere you can find a fertilizer manufacturing plant, a phosphate fertilizer manufacturing plant, you'll find one of those gyp stacks very close by. In fact, I think I've been told that the highest mountain in Florida is a gyp stack, an old plant that's been there. So in 1976, Congress passed the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, or RCRA, which gave EPA authority over all solid waste. 4 years later, in 1980, Congress passed an amendment to that act called the Bevel Amendment, which exempted certain kinds of waste that were high volume, low toxicity, specifically mining waste, manufacturing kinds of waste that really didn't fit into that RCRA framework that Congress had passed. When Congress passed that Bevel Amendment in 1980, that created a firestorm of controversy. Should there be a Bevel Amendment? Should things be exempted? And it's been through many legal challenges since then, but in the end, Congress and EPA decided that phosphogypsum indeed should be exempt from RCRA. But because the way we transport that phosphogypsum up to that stack is through water that has been through our processing plant, EPA felt concerned that might change the nature of that phosphogypsum. So that's why we've been negotiating for 19 years. And like I say, we came to an agreement. Like any agreement, we're not thrilled with it. I'm sure the U.S. government isn't thrilled with it. But in the process of that agreement, EPA did recognize a lot of things that we had done on our own volition that they recognized as important to this agreement. And I've asked Trish if she could just kind of review those, because not only did EPA recognize them, but we hope as community leaders you would recognize them as well and take a bit of pride in a local company that's doing what they can to make those right. So Trish, if you want to just go through those, and these are contained in the letter that we've asked you to consider.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us. So just to kind of cover, I'm not going to read this word for word unless you want me to. I see you guys have copies of these.
We've all read the letter.
Okay. So the first topic talks about the efforts that we've done under our commitment to line the active working areas of the gypsum stack. And we've put a lot of resources into that over several years, and we are operating under a fully lined operating surface of the gypsum stack. And we continue to, as you know, the gypsum stack grows in height, we expand that lined area. And as a result of that, as well as the extraction well water system, we've seen a substantial change in the phosphorus concentration in the Port Neuf River, about 85% reduction. And we continue to work towards meeting, you know, our goals to get to that level that we need to be in the phosphorus river. So we've seen a lot of benefit as a result of that, and we'll continue to work in that fashion and continue to line the gypsum stack even as we expand it. The other thing that we have made a commitment on is the financial assurance for the closure of the gypsum stack, and that's a provision within that consent decree that Simplot will own that closure. And I think in the past, what we've seen with other phosphate operations, unfortunately for the industry, the taxpayers have had to share the brunt of that load with certain businesses in the phosphate patch in Florida and I believe Louisiana. So Simplot has committed to take on that financial assurance. I don't know if you have additional comment on that.
That's an interesting way they do that. In order to make that valid for EPA and for the U.S. government, we hired a third-party engineering firm to come in and say, if the stack were to close in the next 5 years, what would the total costs be? And so they go through a very elaborate process, and then they submit to EPA, here's our findings, here's what we think those costs will be. And if EPA accepts those costs, then once the consent agreement is signed, then we have 30 days to come up with some kind of financial assurance that we will meet those costs. And then that process is repeated every 5 years. So after this one expires, that process will be repeated again, not to the extent that it has been this time, but make sure that those costs are relevant to current costs. So let's say we close the gyp stack in 2089, we're not doing it with 2023 dollars. So.
Good point. I believe it's up for the new annual evaluation in 2025. And there's different mechanisms in which we would secure that financial assurance.
So, excuse me, if you hear somebody say that their Simplot's going to close in 2025 because the gyp stack's closing, that's what it's referring to.
Yeah.
That expires in 2025, and we have to renew that financial agreement.
Correct.
Thank you.
So moving on to the third item that's outlined in this letter. As part of this process, we've identified a mechanism to further recover asset value of our washes and stuff. And in this Bevel Amendment, you know, the agencies is essentially taking a stance of where that line is drawn of upstream and downstream processes. And so in order to comply with those requirements of what they've interpreted as being downstream, we are going to have a recovery system so that we're actually generating fertilizer product and reducing the waste out of that. So we've already gone through the design process of that, and we'll take that engineering to the next level once we get through all of this and install a robust acid recovery system that will enhance our current recovery system. We're, years ago, when we started looking at this, the Dawn plant took a very proactive effort to increase recovery values and send less material up to the gyp stack to begin with. So we already anticipated that, and this will just add to it. The next one is talking about the importance of the BlackRock exchange, and you guys have been kind of familiar with that process. Right now we're in the litigation process of that, but certainly from a sustainable operation, that is a very important exchange for us to be able to retain and expand the gyp stack. I don't know if I need to go into additional detail on that.
No, just a note, that BlackRock exchange, you're familiar with the drama of that. That's now in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And again, the consent decree recognized that BlackRock exchange is an essential part of the future of the gyp stack, which we appreciated as well. So we're feeling confident and hopeful that we can get that resolved.
And then I think the last one, Simplot has offered up $200,000 in mitigation commitment, and it's really and truly to help improve, the Portneuf River, whether that's efforts with riparian or removing jam logs, whatever it is. So it's just a supplemental funding that the company is committed to formally in the consent decree as well. We internally have a number of capital projects that aren't outlined specifically in the consent decree that will support improving sumps and pads and the recovery systems that are in place as well. So ongoing efforts to just support the objective of this Bevel agreement. And that's pretty much the highlights of those key topics, unless you guys have got some additional questions.
Questions?
I do have a couple little questions. In regards to the gyp stack, with the improvements in technology and stuff, is there any, I'm sure there's been some exploration as to what can be done with that waste to use it somewhere else or do something else with it. Can you speak to that? Is there any progress with that, or what's the status of that, just as a general question?
Yeah, and I don't know, Rick, if you've got some specific topics that you want to
Well, I think
cover on that.
generally across the industry, what we're seeing is the safest place for that gypsum is just to stack it near a plant. There's really no commercial value to it. It's not, there is some, when I first moved to Pocatello in 1981, we could back our pickup up to the gyp stack and go home and put it in our garden. But that's not, because you have to maintain the structure of that gyp stack now. I mean, that's just a whole engineering operation to itself. Pickups no longer back up to the gyp stacks. But
Well, I think from a beneficial use, I think there'd have to be some legislative change.
yeah.
I know that the Florida Institute for Phosphate Research has looked at a number of ways of utilizing gypsum for beneficial use, and it just hasn't gotten the headway. The Fertilizer Institute has looked at it. Not to say that eventually that there might be something identified that would take that further, but right now, I think the industry as a whole is pretty reluctant to, unless we've got the full-blown thumbs up and you can proceed forward. I think that being said, we're always looking at ways to minimize the amount of gypsum being generated and manage, and looking at different technology. So I wouldn't say it's dead, it's just a big challenge for the industry as a whole.
Well, given this current administration's direction, anytime you can get an agreement with the EPA, you got to take it and run as fast as you can. So my congratulations to you guys for even getting this far.
It's been a long process.
And if I may add, Commissioners, this process we've gone through is not unique. Every phosphate company is going through the same thing. We had This same issue at our Rock Springs plant, we reached a consent decree agreement 3 years ago. So it's nothing earth-shattering or nothing new. We're all going through the same process. We're just thankful to finally have it done, and we're here asking for your support for that agreement. We appreciate the time Commissioner Crowder spent with us asking hard questions that we had to go back to the well and find the answers to. But we appreciate your support, and we hope that we can count on it on this occasion as well.
This document isn't the last revision.
Do you have an update on the letter?
Yes.
John had been talking to you, and there were some changes. And
Right.
And the one we have here hasn't been
The
updated.
change right here. So this is what was original, and this is the change here.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have it printed.
And so,
I submitted that letter, I think, yesterday.
and Christie
Before you
was
consider.
off.
Oh, yeah,
And she
Christie
come
was-
back today, so it may be in her file.
Right.
And so it did get put in here.
But if you guys wanted to have seen, not seen that, that is the change on there.
Are you happy with the changes that Commissioner Crowder
Absolutely. This
suggested?
actually improves the letter, I think, and it also speaks to what I think, from a commissioner's point of view, the value of this agreement is. So we appreciate the comments, and we'd really love to have those as part of the letter.
And it is in
It is
the
this draft, yeah.
file for today, the electronic file. It's
Well,
just not in the hard copy.
It's here on my computer. I don't know what file it's in
Well,
down there.
that's where it would have come from, so.
Well, what I would then move, unless there's any other questions.
Let me just make a statement here. Just to clarify here, my son works for Simplot. My decisions here are not based on my son's employment there. I just want that out on the record, just to, so it's clear. Okay? All right, now you can make your motion.
All right, Mr. Chair, I would move that we sign the amended version that Commissioner Crowder has, that Simplot has agreed to when we get the paper copy of it, as discussed here today.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
When do you want this? Now, right now?
No,
This is-
so, are you asking me?
Yeah.
So what happens, if you look at the top of that letter, that actually is sent via email to the attorney in charge of collecting the data. I think the deadline is next Monday, September 25th. So, yeah, when you get ready to sign it, if Christie or whoever could just email it to that address, then we'd love to have a copy as well, but that's where it needs to go.
Okay. We'll take care of that then.
Grateful for your support, and thank you for everything, and we hope to be good citizens. We hope we are. We try not to come to the well and ask for favors too often, but when we need it, we learned many years ago in one of our permit processes that the federal courts and the federal agencies really like to hear from local elected leaders. It's a big thing to them. So we hate to keep bothering you with the request, but we know how important it is to those people who read these comments. So thank you for your support. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you guys do. Appreciate you.
All right, Hal.
Sorry. Hal Jensen, Planning Director, Bannock County. With me is Tristan Borquin, Assistant Director. Come before you to ask for some additional funding. But before we do, I need to ask Christie to perhaps assist and clarify if I misspeak. I learned a valuable lesson this year, after last year and this year relative to budgets, that we worked really hard to pare our budget down to what was actual. Previous budgets that, one, I had inherited when I first came, as well as the budget process, there was plenty of fluff, shall we say, that was built into the budgets over 2 years
How
prior.
about the word contingencies?
Contingency.
I like that a lot better.
I like fluff. I want it out.
So one of the things that we have in our budget line is refunds, and we have no control over what does or doesn't take place. And so we've had that number anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. And one of the things that has happened with previous contingencies is that it took care of, for the most part, any potential overages. So if we have one permit, building permit, of a very sizable structure, they go through the process and find out that they're going to withdraw and not move forward with their project, they can be refunded any monies that have not been spent, which is basically the construction portion of a building permit. And it can be a sizable amount of money, anywhere from $2,500 to $4,000 to $4,500. And that will automatically take care of our refund line item. And so then any refunds that are requested for our office and go through auditing then start to take away from our overall budget. In years past, between either me staying on top of it or Christie staying on top of it, this year's not been a good year to stay on top of it, and both of us overlooked the fact that we needed to reopen the budget to take care of the refund line item so that it would protect our budget. So where we're at right now is we're negative $14,000 in our overall budget because those monies have come out of refunds.
Just in that line item. Because overall, you're only
Correct.
in the negative a couple thousand.
But the way the budgeting process works,
Right.
it takes everything out of our budget. The reason that I'm here is that there is a very valuable, in my opinion, a very valuable conference at the end of this month. We received an email at the 1st of September, end of August, 1st of September, relative to a American Planners Association Utah chapter education conference for 2 days. We talked about it in the office. We found that it had value added. And as we went down the path to use our education line item budget, we found out that we didn't have funds to take care of it. So then I come before you to say, this is what has taken place. In 4 years I've been here, I've never asked the commission for additional budget, ever. We've been able to take care of our budget accordingly. But I think it's value added. I'd like to turn some time over to Tristan so that she can share with you the classes that are offered and why, when you hear the titles of these, I believe that you'll recognize why it's valuable to us from the planning standpoint for Bannock County.
So one of the other benefits of this conference is that Utah has an extended invitation to the Idaho chapter of the American Planning Association. So it's Utah and Idaho combining into one in Ogden, which is really nice because typically the Idaho chapter conferences are in Lewiston or somewhere in northern Idaho, which is a little bit longer distance than Ogden for us to get to those. So a couple of the classes that they're offering this year are flood mitigation and emergency response, managing the pressures of a planning office, writing and understanding staff reports, public and private sector planners working together, camping is a cash cow for landowners, is your land use code ready?
Not with the calls I've gotten.
Understanding conservation easements as a planning tool, Utah and Idaho legislative panel, code enforcement, how to work with the community, handle with care, planning commission meeting management, and the biggest one, I think, updating your ordinances and process options you may not know you have.
So that said, we have been proactive, and we do have rooms reserved. There's a special rate at $98 a night, which is a nice financial benefit to put that together. It's close in proximity. Our per diem, as well as the registration, right now our total is about $1,464 with where we're at in the planning stage. We're asking for $2,000 to make sure that we're covered. And then whatever I need to do moving this forward towards year-end budget with Christie to get this other item rectified, we would like to do so.
And in the meantime, Elise got with me, and they actually have a little bit more of an overage. Some of their plan reviews have come in, and that line item is also over budget. So the total ask is actually about $4,200. And what I would recommend is we use contingency for that. We have two options. The commission can do a resolution to allow planning and zoning to use up to, say, $4,200 or $5,000, or, and then they can sign the claims, or you guys have to sign the invoices for all of these overages.
No, let's not do a resolution. Give them up to $5,000 and pay the bills.
The contingency funds just come out of the general fund?
Yes, which is where planning and zoning is paid also.
Right.
This just allows us to track the overage, which has some benefit, because then when we look at budget going
You know
forward,
where.
I can look and see how much they truly did go over budget,
Yeah.
which then we know what to add for potentially 25's budget, or what to watch for 24's.
Okay.
Okay.
Questions?
Okay. I'll coordinate with Amy to get that resolution signed hopefully on Thursday, if we can push
So you've
that.
already got your reservations and you're registered for the class and everything? Okay. So we make sure that you've moved forward without.
We just wanted to make sure that we had the placeholder, and if we couldn't secure the funding, we weren't out anything, but at least to secure our place in the conference. We will be sending 3, Tristan, Jim Bagley, and Elise Foster.
Good. No, I
2
appreciate
days,
it.
Friday, or Thursday, Friday, the 28th, 29th, something like that.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, good. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
And what'll happen is they'll just bring a resolution to us next week and we'll sign that, so
Perfect.
you'll be good. All right, Scott? No, yeah.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Scott Crowther, Business Manager and Event Director. We do have a contract to discuss, so
Need to go into executive.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that I'd move that we would enter into executive session under Idaho Code 74-2061. Which one's that?
Says B and E.
B and E. There we go.
Commissioner Moser,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,